Jonathan, again, thank you for joining us. Can we still say it's neck and neck? We're seeing some polls giving a lead to the Conservatives as of the past few hours.
We are, but some polls, not all polls, and we can also see that those polls have been so close that it's very difficult to call it. What does seem somewhat likely is that there will be another hung parliament, like in the last general election, which would mean that there'll have to be some sort of coalition or minority government or some sort of arrangement that will enable a government to be formed at all. And even then, it may be an unstable one that doesn't last very long. Something that, of course, people aren't that unused to in Israel, but here in the United Kingdom, that just isn't how we tended to do things in our first-past-the-post system, which has traditionally returned a majority government from one party with the other main party in opposition. So
the smaller parties that are trailing behind in the polls, are they giving now more weight, can we say, because of this hung parliament scenario?
That's absolutely right. Just as in the last election, the Liberal Democrats found themselves in quite a powerful position despite not getting a large percentage of the vote compared to Labour and the Conservative Party. This time round, it's not just the Liberal Democrats, but it's also the United Kingdom Independence Party, or UKIP, which is a Eurosceptic party, and, surprisingly, some might say, the Scottish National Party, fresh from its near defeat on Scottish independence, the referendum that was held in Scotland for independence from the United Kingdom. The party has surged in its support in Scotland, and some polls have even suggested that it could actually take all of the Labour seats in Scotland itself, which would return it in a very strong position in Westminster, giving it the ability to perhaps hold a Labour government to ransom by insisting on certain red line issues that would definitely not be in the interest, some say, of the English voters who won't have had a chance to have a say about those particular members of Parliament being there in Westminster.
Ruti, a lot of the international media is dubbing these elections as the boring British elections, and they like to joke around about the more less colorful, shall we say, elections. It's only 6 weeks of campaigning. It's a very short time. But in any case, there are big issues that UK voters are going to the polls for.
Right. Well, of course, the big issue is Europe, one big issue. And the other big issue is, domestic, which I think is even more relevant for most for most British voters. We're talking about the health system, and the national health, education, and again, and this is where the nexus is with the foreign policy, which is the relationship with Europe. But by and large, I think if I want to sort of go in a bit of a different direction, because we on our website, on our i24news website, had an editorial yesterday, the headline of which was the UK election and the Jewish question. And one of the unusual things in this election is that one of the candidates, Ed Miliband, is in fact Jewish. And I was laughing because I think that for decades Israelis and Jews, because of their diaspora experience, I think, have always asked, is so-and-so good for the Jews? It stems from the time when there were local governors and rulers and kings who were good for the Jews and bad for the Jews. I think it's kind of a funny question to ask now that Israel is, 67 years into its independence.
Jonathan, you want to weigh in there? The poll numbers mostly are giving Jewish voters leaning conservative much more than towards Ed Miliband.
Well, we have to be very careful when we talk about a Jewish vote because, of course, Jewish people in the United Kingdom, like any other group, vote on a number of different issues, not necessarily connected to their Judaism. That aside, you're absolutely right that polling seems to indicate that Jewish voters are more interested in David Cameron. Hardly a surprise when we look at Edward Miliband's record on Israel and even on other issues. For example, he was whipping his party to vote in favour of a recognition of Palestinian statehood at that controversial symbolic vote in the House of Commons. But the Financial Times got it right when they quoted a Jewish leader as saying, "When you told me we might have our first Jewish prime minister, my first reaction was, I didn't know David Cameron was Jewish." I think we're looking here at the fact that Ed Miliband is Jewish, halachically speaking, but when it comes down to his upbringing, he's the first to admit that he didn't have a particularly Jewish upbringing. It was more of a socialist upbringing, if we're to look at a powerful force in his history. And really on Jewish issues, I don't think many Jewish people feel that he's particularly connected to anything that they feel is important in the election.
Right.
So the Jewish vote may well, in fact, swing towards David Cameron, who this week was campaigning in the constituency of Hendon, which is a North London constituency with a high percentage of Jewish voters. It's a very marginal seat, which the Conservative Party is hoping to hang on to, but it really only won. It swung from the Labour Party by only a few votes last election, and he's specifically been appealing to Jewish voters there on all sorts of issues, even pointing out that he feels that it would be a bit of a disaster for Israel if the Labour Party got into government.
Jonathan Sacerdoti there in London, thank you for joining us. Ruti, thank you for joining us. The Jewish vote may be small, but it's being intensely competed for.